In the last 6 episodes, I have been progressing at lightning speeds through the Create Tech tree. I mean, I have done everything from get the best power source in the game in the form of a steam engine. I have the Blaze Cake factory to power it. I have this ore processing machine to crush all of the insane amounts of ores this digging machine gets. And I have a multitude of other farms. But I have yet to do a single shred of vanilla progression. I mean, I'm still in iron armor, and I haven't even made an enchantment table yet. I mean, normally at this point in a series, this is episode 7, I think my last series, by this time, I had an insane villager setup with literally every enchantment in the game, and I think I had even beaten the Ender Dragon and gotten my Elytra already. So, to say I'm lagging behind from what I normally do is an understatement. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but honestly, I am getting kinda tired of dying because I have iron armor and I suck at combat. So today we are going to be taking a step back from the Create mod and we're going to do some vanilla progression stuff. And we're going to start with villagers because it's kind of my usual starting point for vanilla stuff. I think pretty much in every other Minecraft world I've done, as soon as I even remotely have the resources to do it, I make an absolutely over-the-top villager trading hall because honestly, I like having fully enchanted armor. It's just very nice to never die to anything. And in this world where everything is water and half of my stuff is underwater, having stuff like Aqua Affinity will be an absolute lifesaver, and having good armor against all the drown that spawn here with tridents, which I swear is far more than there should be, will also be amazing. So, villagers, how do we do that? Well, the first step is always go kidnap some villagers, and luckily I have already set up a little bit of a portal inside of a village that is incredibly close, as you can see by how long this portal is away from my main portal, and I've already done a little bit here just because I kind of needed mending and silk touch for a couple of projects that I've done previously, so I already have a little bit of villagers set up in this village. I have a nice librarian here with some mending books, and somewhere hidden in a canyon, I think it's this one, like right there is a mending dude. So I have 2 villagers so far, and I had the foresight to closet away these 2 so I can breed them up just in case everyone else dies, which is probably the case, because I think this village is close enough to my base that it is actually loaded and zombies spawn and kill everything. So I guess we're going to start with a villager breeder. But there's a little bit of an issue with that. I am severely running out of space in my little starter cave, and while I could expand upwards or go over here or something, I think for this one I don't actually want to put my villager setup in my base, which is what I've done like in every other time I've done a villager breeder, just because it's kind of nice to have them super accessible. But when you really think about it, how often do I need to completely make a new set of armor with full enchants? It's like more often than it should be, but not that often. So I've decided I actually want to put the entire villager setup in this village, which I think I could do a pretty cool like turn on it by adding probably a couple more buildings, even though the hall itself will most likely be underground because those structures are gigantic. I could try my best to make it look good, which is honestly something I don't normally do. If it's a structure that's outside my base, it can be completely made out of cobblestone for all I care, but raise my standards a little bit, I guess. And of course that leads to another problem. The only way for me to get here, like, realistically right now is to take my nether hub. And if I want things to look good, the nether hub being the way to get there it's not the way to do it if I want something to look good. I kind of like this style of nether hub where everything is kind of like train lines, I guess. That's kind of like the style I go for, even though really it's easy and looks kind of good. But I think I'm going to make a little bit of a path to it in the overworld, just because it's not actually that far away, and having a route to it in the overworld will be a lot easier, and it'll look a lot better. But of course, if I want it to be anywhere near comparable to the nether, it's going to need to be really fast, because the nether is just about as speedy as you can get. And seeing as I can't fly yet, that's kind of hard to do, but there are ways to do it, especially with the Create mod. Specifically through the use of trains, which I currently have 1 stack of train tracks, I've got some stations, and I think I have 1 train casey, and those are really all the things you need to make trains. But a stack of train tracks is not nearly enough to actually get me all the way over to the village, which I'm pretty sure is just at the edge of my render distance, like right here. So I need to get more of them, and I already have a stack, so clearly they're not that hard to get, but they are actually weirdly annoying. So the way you make train tracks in Create is with this thing called sequenced assembly, which I went over like ages ago, so I'm just going to go over it again, because even I forgot how it works. Pretty much, a couple things in Create require sequenced assembly, and for train tracks, you give it some smooth stone slabs, and you have to give a deployer the other item and have it put it on for you. For whatever reason, I guess I'm just incapable, and I gave it way too many, so it's making just a ton. But if we give it one of these incomplete tracks, which is just like a partial recipe that's been done, all things in sequenced assembly have them, and we give it another iron nugget, we get another incomplete track, but this one is slightly better. And if we put it into a press, it smashes it, and you get one train track. Now, this whole process can be done kind of fast, especially if you get like a nice flow going, but it's kind of annoying. Like, I've made 4 train tracks so far. It takes a while. So I want to improve this a lot by automating it, which is actually super easy to do. I think sequenced assembly recipes are pretty much designed so at the beginning of the game they're like a little annoying but still possible, but then once you get into automation they become actually really easy. So all you need to do is get a conveyor belt with 2 of these things on it with iron nuggets and then the mechanical press on it as well, and it will just place them and then smush them and make it automatically for you. And that's actually a super simple contraption. The only issue is I don't have space. But this one I actually do want to put in my base somewhere. I want to be able to watch it, not because I need to, because I think it's going to break. Like I said, it's really simple, but just because it's kind of satisfying to like watch things work. 'Cause I've made a couple of these in my creative testing world, and they're just like really fun to watch. I was thinking maybe put it down here somewhere, like just like in this wall or something, and that would work pretty well. But I have one issue with that, which is my basement is kind of very quickly becoming a mess. I built this whole thing in the last episode, and I pretty much just like put things down here that I needed at the time. So it started with this room and that one with this thing that I'm probably never going to use and this elevator, and then I expanded over here for the tree farm controls. And if I keep doing it like that, not only am I going to run out of space to actually expand it, because if I put something on all 3 of these walls, I can't go anywhere because this is all water. So I'm going to try and plan it out a little bit more so I actually have room for several different sequenced assembly things, because, like I said, rails are not the only thing that requires this, and I want to be able to watch all of them because they're all really satisfying. Okay, so solutions. The idea I've come up with is actually an old idea I came up with that I just never actually did because I just didn't really have the time for it. I essentially have this tunnel system that leads to technically everywhere, but it's a huge mess and you can't really get anywhere functionally with it. But it has this little part that goes out into the water, because I had an idea a while ago to build something in like the style of this with like glass and spruce, so you can like go out in the tunnel and see out into the water, just because I think this view is like kind of cool with all the pillars and stuff, and you can see like the bottom of that. But since my main constraint over here is the water, I could do a tunnel coming out from here that just like pops on over to the other side. You could get a cool view of the river in the meantime, and popping over here would allow me to have plenty of space for as many things as I want. Yeah, and I think it turned out really good actually. I've just done the same like red roof type thing that I've done before because I think it consistently looks pretty good. It looks a little weird in this one just because it's quite long, but other than that, I think it all turned out really well with all of the spruce and like dark oak support stuff. And if we head inside, the interior I think also turned out pretty good. I went through a couple different iterations of this with just like doing the glass different ways and having the walls be made out of different stuff, but I did land on just spruce like everything else is, and you can in fact get a pretty cool view of the river. You got some squid swimming around. There's nothing too interesting to look at, but it's just a nice thing to be able to look at. And of course the place that it leads is what we really care about. It comes to this little junction where I'm planning on adding something over here and possibly over here. There's a lot of space over here for stuff, whereas on the other side, not so much. It hits the water pretty fast, but I've already made the room for all 3 of the sequenced assembly lines, so let's go ahead and get started making those. First up is the easiest one, that being train tracks, and if we put the 3 required things, or I guess it's only really 2, but you know, proportions and stuff, it should start to make train tracks, and those are going to end up in this barrel, and that is so much faster than I can do it manually. I put in a whole stack of materials, so we'll see how long it takes to do that. It should be like less than 5 minutes, hopefully. according to my incredibly inaccurate method of looking at a clock that doesn't have a second hand on it, about a minute, so pretty good, and definitely a lot faster than I could do that by hand. And this thing can just go on its own too. I don't really have to even stand here, so I could just give it a ton of materials and let it craft a ton of rails, which is absolutely perfect. So now let's move on to the other two, which are actually a little bit more difficult, which is precision mechanisms and obsidian plating. We're going to start with precision mechanisms because obsidian plating has some, like, actually pretty serious problems that I have to tackle, whereas precision mechanism has, like, 15 steps to it, but it's really repetitive, so it's just a little bit of an engineering challenge to get it to actually do all of them in the right sequence. Okay, it should be working. I have the ingredients for 3 precision mechanisms, which would take me an incredibly long time with just doing it manually, and it should hopefully work. That's the wrong item. Okay, so I have a mechanism up here that is theoretically making it all work, and it seems to have flooded. This was full of redstone at one point, which means that that soundly does not work. Okay, the redstone circuit now actually has redstone in it, so we should be good to throw these ingredients in, and it should make precision mechanisms instead of failures. And it's going. Look how it's... This, I think, is the most satisfying one, to be quite honest. It looks so fun, and we got 1 precision mechanism, we got a 2nd precision mechanism, and we're waiting on the 3rd, and it is done. That is amazing. Also, this is a thing that can happen with precision mechanism, in case you're wondering why that turned into an iron ingot. There's a whole list of things that precision mechanisms have a small chance of just becoming when you make one. Iron ingot is on that list, so is like clock and cogwheel and shaft. There's like 9 different things, I think. So this will fail occasionally, but it would also do that if I was doing it manually, and this way it is at least easier to redo it. Luckily, I don't actually need 3 precision mechanisms right now, so I don't have to worry about it. But now, next one. This one is going to be obsidian plates, and I said earlier it had some pretty serious problems with it, and that's because it does. Unfortunately, it is actually used for trains. That's about the only thing obsidian plates are used for, so we do have to do it before we get on to villagers. But the problem is, obsidian plates, the way you make them is you take powdered obsidian, which comes from crushing obsidian, it's easy enough, and you add lava to it. And lava is incredibly difficult to get a very large amount of, especially if I want to make infinite obsidian plates, which I do. I mean, I don't actually need that, but, like, it'd be nice. I spent a whole episode getting lava a couple, like, weeks ago, so we're not doing that again, obviously, because I already have an infinite lava source, and that was the main hard part, but it's way over here. So I have to get a pump from here all the way over there, and it has to come from this because this is more than 10,000 blocks, and therefore the create mod considers it infinite, so I can just pump as much lava as I want out of it. So I guess let's go run a pipeline. Well, that is one more thing added to the mess hidden underneath my base. It goes all the way around here, through the tunnel, and into the sequenced assembly room, which means we can actually get started on this sequenced assembly line. And just like that, it is done. Other than the lava, this one is actually pretty technically simple because it just has the one input of obsidian, and other than that, it's actually really not that bad. I mean, it has crushing wheels back here that aren't shown because I couldn't figure out a way to, like, put them in this nice little 3x3 of glass and have it look good, but, you know, it still looks pretty fine in my opinion. You have the spout and 2 presses, and if we put obsidian in here, it should convert it into sturdy sheet. I've learned that it's called not obsidian sheet. And also a fun thing about when you crush obsidian, you have a chance of getting your obsidian back. So I essentially just made a sturdy sheet from literally nothing. But if we throw in 10 more obsidian, not all of them will get obsidian back. I want to say it's like a 50-50 chance, but I'm also pretty sure that's wrong, because I've definitely gotten way more than that and way less than that, so maybe I'm just have been really lucky or really unlucky, but I guess we're about to see how much we get from 10, and it looks like we get 8 back, so definitely more than 50%, assuming I didn't just get really lucky there, but I can kind of just keep throwing this through the system, and it will continue to get me sturdy sheets out of it, because 1 sturdy sheet equals 1 train casing, and 1 train casing essentially means 1 train, plus it's used in a bunch of other stuff. But now that we have this, we can actually get on to working on trains, because the whole point of this episode was, well, there's supposed to be villagers, but now it is getting a train track to the village. So let's go do that. But that kind of brings us back to the original problem, which is why I'm building the villager stuff in the village in the first place, which is I'm running out of room, and I certainly don't have room for a giant train station anywhere in here without it looking super janky and obstructing the view of something else other than like that back corner, which I still don't really want to build in. But I think I'm going to solve this problem the same way I did for the sequenced assembly lines, which is I'm going to build it on the other side of the river. But instead of it being underground like these ones are, it's going to be above ground, which means we need another way to get to the other side, because this tunnel obviously only really works if you're going underground. And considering the above ground version of a tunnel is just a bridge, let's go ahead and jump into a time lapse and get one of those built. Yeah, so I totally forgot to press the record button, but it's not the most interesting bridge in the world, so you're not missing out on much, but here it is, and I think the design looks pretty good, at least. The bridge itself looks great. I think it's fine, and I don't think I'm going to change it that much. I mean, I'm not really great at building bridges, so it's not as good as other stuff, but it's fine. Over here, however, mainly this, it looks really bad, I think, just the way it connects to the island over here. It's like it's on too large of a scale to really fit this little cutesy, like, little farm area. But I'll fix that later, because I actually plan on completely redoing my starter base, because I think it doesn't look that good. It's just kind of weird and hobbled together, and then, like, the hill coming out the top of it looks really weird too. So whenever I redo that, I'll also fix this little connection with the bridge, and hopefully it'll look a little bit better then. But for now, we have a bridge that goes to absolutely nothing, so let's build a train station. And I'm not going to forget to press the record button this time, so let's do it in a time lapse. Hey, I didn't forget to press the recording button that time, and I'd say the building turned out pretty good. It's very similar to other buildings I've made, namely this one. It has that same, like, red roof stuff, but because the roof is so big, I decided to split it up with some of this spruce roofing stuff. I think it looks pretty good. I also really like the little archways that I added on. These were originally going to be like a clock tower. It was going to be a lot bigger and be a clock tower, obviously, because a lot of train stations have clocks on them, I feel like. And then it kind of got shrunk down to this, because I couldn't make a clock tower look good. But I'd say it looks fine nonetheless, and the inside is extremely boring. It also has a classic problem of mine, which is the I designed this in creative with night vision on problem, and my axe broke, so it's quite dark in here, and there's a lot of monsters. There's a creeper earlier, but I don't think it's here anymore, and there are occasional zombie sounds, but I don't know where that is, so I'm going to ignore it. But yeah, first order of business, I gotta light this thing up before we can do like anything in here, because I do not want to be bombarded by monsters constantly. There we go, no more darkness in the train station. I mean, this corner is still a little bit dark, but it's spawn-proof, so that's all that really matters, because if I get a creeper in here and it blows up my train, I'm gonna be annoyed, so I'm just gonna hope that doesn't happen, and it shouldn't, because there is no darkness. But currently, there is no train for creepers to build up, so I think that's gonna be the next step, because before I can make a train track going anywhere, I kinda need a train to go on that track. Actually, that might be the wrong way around, but nonetheless, we're gonna start with the train. Okay, train is in. It looks a little wacky. Its design is not the best I've ever made, but I think it does actually look decent enough for what it needs to be, which is a train. And it is also completely functional and has a passenger capacity of 8 for some reason in my single player world. So I don't really know why that's the case, considering I also have to sit in the driver's seat. And now we can go and hit the end of a track, because I probably should have built the track before I built the train, but, you know, we all learn our lessons that we already knew before we made the mistake at some point. And also, it's just a fun thing. You can kind of walk through the walls. Trains are very janky in the Create mod, mostly just because they're technically entities, but they're entities that you have to interact with, so just stuff like that is just possible. But without further ado, let's go ahead and build train track, which is a little bit more difficult than just smacking down some tracks, even though that is essentially it, because I want it to look nice. And originally I was just like, okay, I'm going to go from here, go up here, go through the hill, and then up onto the village, which is right here about. Wow, that looks wacky. But that would be really ugly to just have it go through like a super bland tunnel, because it would be a long enough tunnel that I am not doing an interior for it. So instead, I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have the train go all the way up to the surface here and then go a little bit along, because then I can kind of add decorations on the side without fully outfitting like a tunnel, because fully outfitting a tunnel is a lot more work than just adding like a little bit of surface train track decoration. Something like this, kind of simple and not as extravagant as a full tunnel would be, although this is almost 100% made out of spruce logs, but we have a tree farm, so that shouldn't matter too much. And there is one issue with this, which it is technically very slightly thinner than the train is wide, as in all these trapdoors that are sticking out a little bit. The train's going to collide with them, but it doesn't actually matter. Trains will phase through blocks as much as they want, so I don't really care, because you'll never really see the outside too much, and it's just going to be the barely littlest little bit of clippings, so it'll be fine. Let's go ahead and build the rest of the track in this, which is going to take a while. This track's kind of long. The train line is complete, and we now have a fully functioning, pretty high-speed train track all the way from my base over to the village. It's actually a pretty short one, and there's only like a couple things wrong with it. Mostly it's actually just that like the way I built this meant that it made some of the trees really janky, like this one and this one, which is just floating leaves that won't ever decay because they're technically touching logs. I'm not really going to fix any of those, though, because I just don't really care that much. I mean, it looks fine, and honestly, that stuff is super not noticeable, so I'm never really going to fix it. And the only other problem is the curves. There's a curve here, and then there is one, like, way down there. There's a little curvy bit of the road. And during the curves, the train clips through the sides, like, way more than it does like in a straight bit. Like on a straight bit, you know, it clips through a little bit like that. That's clipping through. But on curves, boy, it's just like, it's bad. I'm also not going to fix it though, because I could go through every block of the curve and like make sure no part of the train hits it. But that's far too much effort. You can't see my face. There I am. Far too much effort for me to actually do, so I'm not going to. But if I'm not going to fix any of the problems with the track, there's only really one thing left to do, which is to build a train station on this end of the rail, because currently it kind of just ends and it's hard to get in the train. It's a whole thing. But I'm actually not going to do that in this episode, just because that I want to work in tandem really well with all of the rest of the villager stuff that I'm going to build. So I'm going to wait until next time when we hopefully actually make some progress on my villager stuff, because that was kind of what I was meaning to do today. Got carried away by trains though, quite literally. So we're going to leave that till next time. But for now, I really hope you enjoyed this one, and I will see you then.